What if I told you that becoming wealthy isn't about making one big financial decision, but about making the right small decisions every single day? These 9 daily habits might seem tiny, but they add up to life-changing money over time. Look, I used to think I needed some big breakthrough, a raise, a side hustle, or a lucky investment to get ahead financially. But then I realized the secret was in the small stuff I was doing every day without even thinking about it. We're talking about decisions like whether to track your spending, how to handle your subscriptions, and what to do before you buy anything. Boring stuff doesn't feel important in the moment, but can literally save you thousands of dollars over time. So in the next bit of time we have here, I'm bringing down 9 simple daily money decisions that seem small but add up to real wealth. Let's dive in. Daily habit number 1 is paying yourself first. Now you might be thinking paying yourself first. That's kind of ironic, right? Like you gotta wait for your company to pay you, and yes, you're right. What I'm talking about more though is your future. So when you pay yourself first, you're setting aside part of your paycheck before you spend money on rent, utilities, and I know that sounds kind of crazy because you need those necessities, but before you do that, you set aside an amount of money for saving and investing, and the reason for this is it helps you live life more simply. You're probably not going to overspend. It also creates room in your budget for saving and investing. Oftentimes we look at necessities like, oh, I have to buy these necessities. Well, necessities are things like food, clothing, and shelter. A fancy tomahawk steak is food, and food is a necessity. That doesn't make the tomahawk steak a necessity. A mansion is a form of housing. It's shelter, but that doesn't make the mansion a bare necessity. It makes housing a necessity. Oftentimes we upgrade our necessities. We get better food, we get a better place, and that's okay. But we do that before we create room in our budget to pay ourselves first, to save and invest. So what we want to do is make sure we're saving and investing first, and then using whatever money we have left over to cover rent, to cover utilities, to cover whatever, and doing that in a smart way. First, we want to pay ourselves. It's a great habit to get into. But paying yourself is just the beginning. The next habit is about making every single purchase you make matter. Another daily habit is intentional spending. How we spend our money is important to our finances because it changes everything. If we spend money, we want to make sure it's something that we're doing is intentional and what we want to do. Oftentimes people get into this trap and just consuming, that they either spend more than they make, which is a problem in itself, or they're spending money on things they don't really want. Sometimes our friends really like stuff and we want to try it, and then we feel pressured to buy it. But it's like maybe we don't even want what our friends have. So that kind of just plays into this. Make sure we're being intentional with our spending, being intentional in buying the things we actually want, and logistically making sure we're spending enough money on the things we need to as well. Now, once you're saving and spending intentionally, there's something you need to do with that money, but you need to do it quietly. Another daily habit is compound quietly. And I'm not going to cover this for too long. We're going to keep this short and simple. You want to make sure you're invested in getting compounded growth, but we also want to make sure we're doing it quietly. Because when we're talking and we're talking and talking, it's going to make us sound richer than we are, which is not a good thing. Because then people feel like they're entitled to some of your money. And sometimes when you're compounding money, it doesn't mean you're actually rich yet. And so you don't even have money to give them. And then they just think you're a terrible person. So you just create multiple issues for yourself there. Not that they're entitled to your money, even if you did have it, but when you're investing and when you're saving and when you get rich, don't tell anyone or don't flex it because it only creates bad problems. It doesn't create good problems. But building wealth quietly is just one piece of the puzzle. The next few habits are about the daily details that most people completely overlook. These next 3 habits might seem boring, but they're where the real money gets saved or lost every day. Next up is track everything. And this sounds really dumb and simple, but it really is true. Sometimes we spend money on things and we just spend and then we just spend and then we just spend. And we just kind of forget that we spent money on those things, especially when they're super small purchases. But those small purchases add up. If you spend $5, $5, $5, $5, maybe like 10 times, and then you don't really think about it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I'm like $50 lighter. It's like, oh yeah, I got coffee 10 times this week. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So just tracking your expenses and being aware of what you're spending money on, and you could also find subscriptions you just weren't using. And that's a good thing to keep note of as well. But tracking what you spend is only half the battle. You also need to look at what you already own. Our next daily habit here is to use what's owned. Oftentimes we just buy a bunch of stuff and there's nothing wrong with buying things you want and even buying things maybe you don't need, but it's just a weird purchase and it'll make you enjoy that purchase. But hey, if you're making the purchase, let's make sure we're at least using it. Oftentimes we buy stuff. We buy clothes and they get stuck at the back of our wardrobe and we never put them on again. Like either get rid of it and get some money for it as well, donate it and give it to somebody who needs it, or just don't buy the new thing and keep using the old thing. Because oftentimes we just get wrapped up in this cycle of spending money we don't need to on things we don't need. So just make sure you're using what you own, and if you aren't using it, then get rid of it. It's really that simple. And when you do decide to buy something, there's a principle that can save you money and make you happier. Next up here is less but better. better. This kind of plays in the idea of quality over quantity as well, which is something that I heavily subscribe to, and I think you guys should subscribe to it as well. Not only that, I think you should subscribe to this YouTube channel. But okay, anyways, let's get back to it. The idea of less but better is a really easy but simple idea because it kind of goes back to that idea of we just buy. But instead of buying and buying and buying and buying, let's buy less, let's buy nice, so we don't have to buy those things over again. And also, so we're just happy and content with the purchases we have. Oftentimes, I think we get lost in that cycle and we just kind of lose sight of that. So I think this is just a good way of going about it. When you buy one really good jacket instead of 3 cheap ones, you save money in the long run, you have less clutter, and you're actually happier with what you have. It's a win all around. But anyways, let's move on. The 3 final habits are about the bigger picture, how to structure your entire financial life for long-term success. So our next daily habit is to cut quiet leaks. The first thing that comes to mind is the subscription trap. We have so many subscriptions. We subscribe to music, movies, television, we subscribe to magazines, phone apps, we subscribe to everything. And it's because it's a great business model. It's not because it's good for the consumer, it's good for the person who runs the company. Oftentimes we get bought into this thing and we don't want to cancel it, and we just don't want to do anything like that. But oftentimes there's so many subscriptions we don't need. There's a reason why these businesses offer subscriptions. It's because they profit off of them so heavily. And so being a consumer, cutting the subscriptions and being smart is just a good way to go. There's also other little traps we might fall into that we should be looking for as well, but the subscriptions overall is the main one we need to be looking for. But again, cutting subscriptions is just part of a bigger picture that can transform your entire relationship with money. Living below your means. Here's a really simple one, but it's an amazing daily habit to get into. Live below your means. And I'm going to take this even a step further. Live as cheap as you possibly can while still enjoying life. I think that's such a much better way to live instead of just living below your means. Because buying things isn't going to make us happy. Buying things might bring us temporary happiness, but it's not going to make us a totally different person. Our value, our worth, and what we appreciate comes from so many different things that we just need to make sure we're setting our eyes on the right things. Not thinking that something we buy is going to fulfill us, because it inherently just won't. So keeping that in the back of our minds is a great thing. I think sometimes we forget that though. When you live below your means, you're not depriving yourself, you're buying yourself freedom. Freedom from debt, freedom from stress, freedom to make choices based on what you want, not what you can afford. Which brings us into a major habit that ties everything together. Our last daily habit is to value things of value and not status. So many of our purchases, so many of our daily habits financially come from wanting to please others or just wanting to look cool. Oftentimes, the things we buy need to bring us value, they need to make us happy, and they don't need to make other people around us happy. And so just going after things of value is always going to be much better than going after things of status. And so just doing that constantly, consistently over time is how we're going to grow as people. And so making sure not just to make ourselves happy, but making sure that we're buying things that actually matter and not things that don't. And that's the whole idea of value over status. But now that you know these 9 daily decisions that quietly build wealth, there's a deeper mindset shift that makes all these habits feel natural instead of like a sacrifice. So check out this video where I reveal why looking poor will actually make you rich.